Hi, and welcome to Love on the Autism Spectrum Season 2. If you're a regular listener, please feel free to jump to about the minute and a half mark to skip this introduction. If you're new here, I want to say I'm your host, Barbara Lazzaroni, licensed marriage and family therapist, neurodivergent coach, and creator of the Neurodivergent Spiral of Life. Please call me Blaze. All my friends do. This podcast is for autistic adults, adults with ADHD or complex trauma, and the partners who love them, as well as neurodivergent couples, especially those who are tired of being told to communicate better, try harder, or fix themselves in systems that were never designed for how they're wired. Here, we slow things down. We talk about real relationships, real nervous systems, and real life without fixing, pathologizing, or rushing your process. I bring clinical experience along with decades of lived relationship experience to create a calm, emotionally intelligent space where nothing about you needs to be defended, explained, or justified. Each episode is an invitation to understand yourself, your partner, and your patterns with more compassion, clarity, and choice. We make lots of room for nervous system safety, emotional truth, and the patterns that actually shape neurodiverse relationships without blame, pressure, or performance. This isn't therapy advice. It's lived experience, clinical wisdom, and steady support for those of us who are wired differently. So take a breath, settle in. I am so glad you're here. And just a quick note before we dive in. This podcast is for reflection and education, not therapy. Licensing doesn't create a therapeutic relationship, and I'm only licensed in the state of California. Any client examples I share are purely fictional, and all of the tools or stories are meant to support your self-reflection, not replace personalized care. If you're in crisis or need immediate support, please reach out to a local professional or call 988 in the United States. Okay, now let's get to today's episode. Hello, and welcome to Love on the Autism Spectrum Season 2, episode number 16, entitled When Love Isn't Enough, Autism and Relationship Burnout. Ooh, this is a juicy topic, everyone. This topic is for the couple who really loves each other, and yet they feel exhausted. For the partner who has been holding things together for such a long time, and for the other person in the relationship who keeps trying but doesn't know what else to do. Oh, for the relationship that hasn't fallen apart, but it also doesn't feel the way it used to. Today, we're talking about burnout in neurodivergent relationships and neurodiverse relationships. One person might be neurodivergent, they both might be. One person might be autistic, neurotypical. We're talking about burnout because burnout is not failure. It's not something to fix quickly. However, it's something that has been building over time. Burnout in relationships doesn't usually arrive all at once. It builds slowly, in small amounts that don't resolve, in conversations that don't land, in needs that don't quite get met. And over time, something shifts. What used to feel like effort starts to feel like weight. And I got to be honest, there have been so many clients that I've worked with that are suffering from burnout in their relationship or even in their life if they're not in a relationship with a partner right now. Burnout is so challenging. because rest is not enough. It's not. And it's been building slowly under the surface and they don't even realize it. So we've got to step back. We've got to go down to the basics. The basics are, if we go to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the basics are to have shelter, a place to lay your head at night that's safe, a good bed, food, water, clothing. Anything more than that is bonus. Shower. Showering is bonus. Getting dressed, honestly, is bonus. And those two things right there, getting showered and dressing, is really tough for people that are in burnout. It is a huge weight. So one partner might find themselves thinking, I can't keep doing this. I just can't keep doing this with my partner. Not because they don't care, rather because they're so tired themselves. They're tired of explaining. They're tired of initiating. They're tired. They're tired of trying to create a connection that doesn't sustain itself. I see these clients come into therapy and coaching sessions many times in tears. I just want to be connected. And often, alongside that absolute exhaustion, comes guilt. Guilt. Guilt that, oh my gosh, it shouldn't feel this way. Or they're trying, or maybe I'm just asking too much. Maybe I'm asking too much of them. I don't know. So then the exhaustion gets pushed down and the cycle continues. So I'm thinking of a couple that I recently worked with, and she described feeling alone in the relationship, even though they were together every single day. They were both retired. They were in their golden years. This was the time that they were supposed to be feeling the most connected. And she was the one still tracking everything. Emotional tone, timing, repair, what needed to be talked about. He cared deeply. However, he didn't experience the relationship the same way she did. He wasn't tracking the emotional shifts. He didn't feel the urgency that she felt. And there was some part of him that wasn't really ready yet to slow down and get it connected to his emotions. No shame, no blame. He just wasn't ready. So when she would bring things up, he felt overwhelmed and would literally shut down. Mhm. And over time, the pattern became predictable. She would reach out for him, and he would pull back, and she would try harder, and he would withdraw more. And this is the pattern that we identified in therapy and in coaching. This is the pattern that's happening. And slowly, she stopped reaching. Not because she didn't want connection, because it hurt too much for her to keep reaching. It just hurt too much. I hope you can feel that. I bet many of you who are listening right at this very moment, you might even be crying. Many times in session, I'm crying with my clients as well. I can see that it hurts one or both of them so much. And this is where we need to talk about grief. Not the kind of grief that comes from a single event. The kind of grief that builds quietly over time. Judith Herman, in her work on trauma and recovery, describes how chronic emotional strain can shape a person's sense of self, connection, and hope. And one of the core experiences in that process is actually grief. Grief for what hasn't been received. Grief for what felt possible hasn't unfolded yet fully in this relationship. Grief for the version of the relationship that was imagined. Oh my gosh, this story that they teach us as children that, you'll get married to a wonderful person and the wedding is the pinnacle. And then after that, we don't talk about the after that. I like to call it the messy middle. There's a lot of grief in the messy middle because we had an idea of what the relationship was, quote, supposed to look like or what we imagined it to be. This grief, it doesn't always look like sadness. Sometimes this grief is just literally numb. Numb. Sometimes it's irritability. Sometimes it's like raging, just being so angry all the time. Sometimes it's withdrawal, like just taking yourself out of the picture. And or sometimes it's distance. All of these are signs of grief. Yeah. Or simply it could be just exhaustion. Burnout. So if you've been feeling tired in your relationship, if you're the one that started to pull back, maybe not because you didn't care, rather because you didn't know how to keep going the same way. What's that adage? The definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over again. Yeah, it kind of feels like you're going insane. Yeah, here's the honest part. There's nothing wrong with you. Your system just may be responding to something that has been building for a long time. And oh my dear, that building deserves attention. It deserves attention from you, your partner, and from the person that you're inviting in to help walk with you in your relationship. So if this conversation is resonating with you, there's a few ways for you to stay connected with me. As you know, you can follow my blog, Love on the Autism Spectrum, where I write more clinical work, more clinical type articles about patterns and burnout and repair and relationships and all of this. And you can also find me on Substack, also called Love on the Autism Spectrum, where I share more personal reflections about what this stage of relationship can feel like, both for myself, since I'm in a neurodivergent relationship, and for the clients that I work with. And of course, this podcast, and you can listen to season 1. And here we are, in April of season 2, focusing on Autism Awareness Week. Yeah, so this week, one of my essays is entitled "The Grief No One Talks About in Neurodiverse Marriages." Yeah, it's real. Yeah, you can find the link in my show notes. So with this couple, the shift did not begin by fixing their communication. It began with naming what was real. And what was real? She was burned out. Not dramatic, not overreacting, burned out. And when that was named clearly and without blame, something changed. He began to see the impact, not as criticism, rather as something that had been happening to the two of them over time. And you know what? She began to feel seen. Pivotal moment right there. She began to feel seen, not just for what she was asking for. She began to feel seen for all the things she was carrying. Well, maybe not all of them, a lot of them, right? And he was there. He's like, I want to understand what's happening from there. for you. From there, they could begin again, more slowly, more honestly, not pretending that everything was fine because it isn't. But also, here's the other thing. They were not assuming that everything was lost. And many times I hear a little bit underneath voices of one or both clients that there's a hidden message, which is I'm out. And I encourage clients when I hear it to say, this really isn't fair to yourself or to your partner. There might be some type of threat that you're leaving or that you've already left. And, we feel these things energetically, and it's important to be there with our partner. So for home play this week, I invite you to consider something quite gently. If this resonates, ask yourself, what have I been carrying in this relationship that hasn't been named? What have you been carrying in this relationship that hasn't been named? You don't need to solve it. Simply let it be seen. And again, I want to share this episode pairs with the blog entitled Autism and Marriage Breakdown, Navigating Neurodivergent Relationships. And again, on Substack, the title is The Grief No One Talks About in Neurodiverse Marriages. And the other thing I wanted to share, and I've been getting some really positive feedback from people, is a book that I published actually last year, right before Christmas. It's entitled Unmasked Self-Acceptance, 365 Days of Coming Home to Who You Really Are. And it's entitled, the subtitle is A Year of Radical Support for Neurodivergent Adults and the People Who Love Them, full of healing, clarity, and wholeness. And for many of you, you probably don't know that I've spent a lot of my time learning how a process called writing to heal, both using poetry and using journaling. And I've led a lot of journal workshops over the years. It's something that's near and dear to my heart because it has been a constant companion on my way through this world. And so this book is 365 days. You can open it anywhere and start, or you can start from the very beginning. Every day has a month and a day number, and it's actually aligned into chapters that follow my neurodivergent spiral of life. All 7 layers of the neurodivergent spiral of life. And I've just kind of spread out those 7 layers a little bit more into 12. Each day offers a quote and an affirmation that can meet you exactly where you are. So as I started today's recording, I opened to month 6. And month 6's theme is all about rest and capacity and energy, having honest energy. And so let me read you the affirmation that I just opened the book to for today. The affirmation is, I am not obligated to burn out just because I'm capable. Let me read that again. I am not obligated to burn out just because I'm capable. So many of the clients I get to see, that I get to work with, are super capable people. They've navigated the world, whether or not they have a diagnosis. They are neurodivergent, and they have navigated a world that, quite frankly, hasn't been all that kind to them. And with all that navigating, they've spent a lot of time pushing, pushing beyond what they're really capable of. I'm thinking about all the years I did that when I was in corporate America as well. We're not obligated to do that. We're not. Just because we're capable, we do not have to burn out. So that's today's affirmation. And this is a quote. And maybe for a home play, you want to play with either the affirmation or the quote as well. The quote is, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Yeah. Burnout does not mean your relationship is broken. It means that something has been carried for way too long. Typically, honestly, by both of you. Not just one person, by one of you, without enough support. And naming that, that's where things begin to shift. That's where people walk into therapy or walk into coaching or walk into their, I don't know, their church, their synagogue, a meditation practice, go to a workshop, listen to a podcast. That's where people realize, oh my gosh, I don't have to do this alone. Support is possible. Yeah, that's when things shift. Because just because you can doesn't mean you should all the time. That's the shift. So to learn more about this topic and explore my blog posts and therapy and coaching and assessment offerings, please visit my website entitled loveontheautismspectrum.com. And I am really so glad you're here. So many people come to me and say, hey, they send me notes or they come to Clarity and Connection calls and they're like, I heard your voice. What you said mattered. You described me exactly. You understand what life is for me. Honestly, yeah, I do. I've been there. I'm still there. I like to say I'm just a little further on the journey. So again, thanks for listening today. Thanks for being here. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for making a commitment to allow me to offer you some support today. And thank you. Thank you again. So take care. Be well. Bye now.